Um, Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Um, I'm here to present some of the work that we've been doing on creating a digital literacy curriculum for children who are blind and visually impaired. Um, is someone here to change slides? I had asked for. Okay. Um, can you put up the slide on the introduction, please? Yeah. So this was most of the work for this curriculum happened during the pandemic, and I don't think anyone here needs an introduction on what happened during the pandemic. So many children were affected, so many children were out of school, and many children were shifting to online classes. But things were a little different in the area of special education. Can I have the next slide, please? Um, so, in the special schools, what happened was children mostly went on a long holiday. Um, they, when other children started online classes almost immediately, children who are blind, uh, who we work with children who are blind in special schools, and they mostly went on a long holiday. It took a long time for schools to come back up. And one of the main problems was that the children were not digitally literate. So if you're not digitally literate, how will you attend remote learning classes? How will you attend online classes? So this is what made us think about creating a digital literacy curriculum for children who are blind. Typically in special schools that we've seen, children are taught digital literacy. Children are taught how to use the computer mostly when they're, say, in fourth grade, fifth grade onwards. But then that caused a lot of problems during the pandemic because uh, we needed people digitally literate almost now. Um, Next slide, please, on the objectives. Yeah. So the what we wanted to achieve by making this curriculum was to equip children to use a computer properly with a screen reader, enough to browse on their own, enough to attend classes on their own. That was the main reason, um, that they should be able to use remote learning tools independently. Next slide, please. So, like any other team of researchers, we also first went on to look at literature, what people have already done. Most of the literature, well, people have taught remote education. I mean, people have taught digital literacy remotely. Um, but most of the literature that we could find were from the global north. And the problem was that all of that literature made a lot of assumptions about what kind of a school classroom setup is going to exist for that intervention to work. For example, they typically assumed that a classroom means there'll be a couple of disabled children, a few disabled children who work with their non-disabled peers, which is not the case in most special schools here. Each child has access to a device of their own. There's a 1-to-1 ratio, which is also not usually true. And most importantly, parents are digitally literate. Parents can support their children in attending remote education. Teachers, similarly, are digitally literate. All of this, people assume all of this when they try to set up interventions, or at least in the literature that we've all looked at. Um, and the problem with that is, well, most of that doesn't hold true here. Um, while we were teaching children how to be digitally literate, we were also teaching teachers. So teachers and parents were sort of learning with us. Some of the parents were not able to, by virtue of being first generation learners. Some of the children were first generation learners. So we couldn't count on parental support the way we could in the global north, for example. So it is in this kind of a circumstance that we set up this initiative. Next slide. Uh, the next one on the team. Yeah. So who set this up and who did this? It is mostly Vision Empire along with Triple IT, and we had a multidisciplinary team, but also a multi-ability team, where we had sighted people, blind people, disabled, non-disabled people all working together to come up with something like this. And it was important, I don't think I need to emphasize this, but it was really important to have screen reader users on board because, because only a screen reader user knows how to teach another screen reader user, or at least someone who has experience in teaching screen readers. Only such a person would know how a screen reader behaves in certain situations, what we have to talk about, what kind of a curriculum should it be. So it was that part we found very important. Next slide. The research was done in 3 phases. First was the pilot phase. Once we decided to do this, we went ahead and did a small pilot in Kerala with a few children. And we took the learnings from that and used it to design the curriculum and make changes to what has already been designed and all of that. And once that was done, we took it to the schools, and now it is being implemented in multiple states in the country. Next slide, please. So, moving on to what we realized when we came up with this curriculum, we needed an entirely new pedagogy for the new normal. We decided to do this in a certain way, and some of it is also about how we work as a team. We decided that we need to train teachers if this initiative has to be sustainable. So we created instruction kits that teachers can follow to teach this curriculum. So it tells the teacher what to do or what to teach. It's like an extended syllabus. It has activities, it has games, and many interesting things to do with the children. We also decided that trainers should work one-on-one with the child initially on a call, and then remotely, once the child learns how to use Zoom and all of that, so that there is a certain amount of one-on-one instruction, which is found to be very helpful. We also created student learning material that the child can go through at their own pace, which was also pretty important, because once the trainer speaks about something, then it is also up to the child to recap, to remember what they spoke about, to remember the activities they did, or to even go back and check something if they do not remember. Most of the teacher instruction kits and most of the curriculum itself is in the form of guided activities, which are playful, fun, and they're very gamified, so that children, because we always had this in our mind that we're doing this for the children, and we need things that will keep their attention. And at the end of each module, we also had practice exercises, so that there is also some amount of reinforcement learning that is happening. Next slide, please. So what we found was that it helped to have a flexible sort of a curriculum, which is based on the child's own learning style. So they could have as much or as little as one-on-one instruction as they wanted. They could use the self-learning material in the way they wanted. So the flexibility was very important, especially when different children, when they start in this curriculum, they're at different levels. Some children may have slowly started operating uh, a computer. They might have learned basic things, but some children may not have. So it was important to have that flexibility. And most importantly, it could be implemented. We found ways to implement this that did not rely entirely on having family, having other people on board at the other end of the call. Also, children who are self-motivated can, go through the teaching learning materials, the student learning kits to check their own progress and all of that. Yeah. Yeah. So, next slide. Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things we realized is that it is important to teach the trainers so that we can impact a wider amount of children. And this curriculum can be adapted to various modalities. It can be, it's flexible in that way. It can be implemented online, offline, in a combination of both, as the child requires. And it was important to have an intervention like this that comes from the cultural, economic, social backgrounds of people in the global south, understanding how special schools are in the global south, and then implement interventions that come out of that kind of background. That was one of the main things that we were looking at. There are many other interventions in India and otherwise. Many NGOs look at digital literacy, but many of them are meant for adults. So we wanted to look at something that can be implemented in a fun and interesting way for children. Yeah, last slide. So that's pretty much all I had. Thanks for listening very patiently. Thank you for changing my slides for me. And if there are any questions, I can take them now.